What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Golden Dice Podcast, episode 33. This is Jack, your host, as always. And with me, I have the two stars of this podcast in reality. With me are Scott and Tommy, the dynamic duo of the brains behind it, and then the person who's just good at playing and insulting everybody else on the team. Scott, Tommy, how you guys doing?
At least Jack knows where his bread is buttered.
Okay. 50% of that was true.
We'll leave it up to the listener to determine which 50%.
I am not any part of any brain operation here, but I'm happy to be part of it regardless.
Tommy would apologize for being born.
I think he has already.
I did that. I've apologized to my mother for that.
I didn't see that happening.
Yeah, last week was weird, guys. I don't know, just having Shane on. That was the first time since like mid-August or something like that, I think.
Yeah, you gotta, he's like every like 12 weeks, you gotta kind of like let him out of his hole.
Oh, poor Shane.
Hey, man, you're his brother. You got to whip him into shape. We say this all the time.
He came at Scott hard last week, so I was kind of curious to see what Scott had to say about that.
I mean, it's hard. It's hard to say much about Shane because he just doesn't really show up anywhere. He's really good at catching Pokemon, though. That we learned.
And
That's
the
amazing.
Pokemon Go references come up. I love it.
Wait, did I beat Shane in fantasy football this week, or did I beat you, Tommy?
I think you beat me in the toilet bowl.
In the toilet bowl, yeah. That's right.
Whatever.
Let's not talk about fantasy. Let's move on from that.
Whoa. I'm at least winning $800 in my big money league. So the fact that I'm in the toilet bowl with Tommy, I'm fine with. Yeah, got the chance for the championship in the other. So that's the important one. It's the only lineup that I look at anymore.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I was set up to do decently. I got in the playoffs, squeaked in a little bit, and then Jared Goff decided to put up negative 0.3 points, and that was my week. It wasn't against the Eagles, whoever they played the week before.
Yeah, where you threw 3 interceptions.
Yep.
I didn't start him in that game, so
We're a dual QB league, so I started.
Yeah, you're kind of stuck.
It was either start him or the guy that's currently playing in San Francisco. I forget his name, Mullins or something, I think.
I couldn't tell you.
But exactly, it's like, why would I?
They got a tight end, and that's it.
I think you made the right call. I don't think anybody would have done that.
Yeah. He's looked pretty exposed past week.
Yeah, he's not at his best.
No, not at all. But I guess we are a Destiny podcast, so we can start to get into some Destiny topics. As stated, it was Shane and our boy Eldis on last week. So I don't know if you guys wanted to comment on anything that we talked about with the bigger stuff, with the Holocron update, and with Convergence being spoiled, the name of the set, the starters, and a few extra cards from that. I don't know if you guys had strong opinions that you wanted to get out of the way before we move into the regional results.
How about you? You go ahead there, Tommy, with whatever you got.
I didn't have. I feel like the changes were a step in the right direction. I think that the results from this past weekend reflect that. I don't think that there was anybody that was unhappy with how this went, although we kind of knew that the first weekend after a massive change like that is obviously going to lead to great diversity. But for me, they hit on pretty much everything they had to hit on. I still am a believer that armored reinforcements is far above the curve, though I didn't necessarily expect it to be hit with this, since most of these changes are pertaining to a previous meta. So yeah, I feel good about the RRG. As far as the previews for the next set, I'm a big fan of what they're doing with the continuing to do with the big characters, following in the footsteps of Vader, like they're doing with the Phasma 3, with the power action to roll in Trooper Dice. I'm excited to see some staples being reprinted in Faust and hinting at others. I also am a big fan of the Obi-Wan, especially the artwork. The artwork is phenomenal. So I'm very excited about it as a whole. I also think 810 for a 9 health character in Satine is a good deal with focus sides like that and even a damage side to boot.
Yeah, I guess I generally agree with Tommy. I'm more of the mind with the balance of the force changes that I'm still on the Yoda deserved it 2 train. Just, objectively looking at it, he's not a 13-point character, even if Snoke is more of not a 13-point character. But then looking at the other stuff that was previewed, the Phasma thing is pretty interesting because it's another take on that big character. I mean, Phasma's dice are not good for a 21-point character.
Not at all. Phasma could be a 12-point character, and those dice would make sense.
Yeah, I mean that's easy. Like her dice are easily like 12, 13-point character. But whereas the most successful big character that they've had so far, not excluding what's in play now, was Sabine, and that's because Sabine hid her dice. Every turn she was going to get a roll in. She was going to get the ability to resolve her dice without being mitigated, which is always the weakness of the big characters, because obviously you put so many points into their dice that if your opponent can get rid of them, it just benefits them so much. Vader is probably the better take, or the more palatable take on Sabine, in the sense that in a lot of ways he's just as unmitigatable. But there's that possibility that you can get the mitigation in, and then there's even that like illusion of possibility that helps make it more palatable. Whereas the every turn hit and run, essentially, people just don't really like that long term. Phasma's going the complete other direction. Who cares if you mitigate her dice? Her dice aren't very good. She's just got 4 of them. And the First Order Stormtrooper's dice is, with the exception, it's more damaging, but it doesn't have the focus. But it's essentially the same as her dice as far as when you're looking at it. So she's going the opposite route of not you can certainly mitigate her dice, but there's so many of them that you're not going to be able to deal with them. And then from there, I'm not as high on the new Obi-Wan as it seems the others are. I'm just looking at it like an 18-point character, 11 health. The paid side bothers me a little bit on that. His power action's obviously pretty interesting, but it is a little limited because of the value of 2. I'm way more high on Satine, Duchess Satine. She's a 10-point character for 2 dice, 9 health, who has 2 resource sides, 2 focus sides, and then a damage side. One of the things that I think got lost in the shuffle a lot when people were kind of evaluating Snoke, or even when they were making Snoke, was the value of having a 2 damage side on a support character. It makes it so that that character can close out games if everything they were supporting around them is gone. But it also makes it so on those, kind of opening turns where your opponent doesn't have any mitigation, plays out their entire hand or whatever, and you just nut roll into max damage, she can add substantial amount of damage to that, 4 damage, and then you just add on to the fact that she gets you a free reroll. I think she's the clear winner of the for spoilers, even if she's not as flashy or as doesn't have the notoriety behind her that like General Obi-Wan has.
Yeah, I think she'll find her way into more decks, but that's just the nature of a support character. But yeah, that 2 indirect side on a support character is super baller. I still have flashbacks. I was playing on TTS like a few weeks ago, and I was barely surviving against Thrawn Snoke before the errata, and then I felt like I was going to make it through the turn, and then Snoke rolled out 4 damage just off his character dice. Yeah. I was like, all right, I'm not going to make this game.
It happens. It's a big thing, looking at a lot of like the older Snoke setups. It's like, oh, what's the max damage that you can deal in your first turn? Well, Snoke can add 4 to that. And then also Satine, she's very good in the roll off for that point cost. She's got 2 different 2 sides. And I think obviously battlefield control is really important when everybody is running feed.
Yeah, most decks don't even have a neutral character and they're jamming Theed in there. It's just such a good battlefield beyond anything else. It's like, yeah, I mean, you're basically starting with 3 resources, and turn 1 is just like, it's more important to have
Yeah, you could
increased amount of resources, and
you could
nobody cares
concede.
sometimes late game.
Yeah, you can concede resources on maybe not every other turn of the game, but second and third turn, and maybe you get it back on the fourth. A 1 and a 4 resource is better than a 2 and a 3 as far as
Yeah.
rounds.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I just wanted to give you guys a chance to state your opinions. Tommy, I know you went into it a little bit on Our Brooks Gaming's last episode as you were a guest host on there, but if you guys want to hear more of Tommy's thoughts, you can go do that. But Scott, we wanted to make sure you felt included. That's all.
I appreciate that. I feel
All right,
wanted and needed.
We will jump on. Yeah, whatever you say, Dennis. Is that what Ray calls you?
That is what Ray calls me.
I mean, I could definitely picture you in that scene where he's driving to work from the suburbs when him and Mac buy a house.
Dude, shoot the gap. Yeah, I don't road rage. I don't really anything rage, but if that's what Ray sees me as, then that's what Ray sees me as. Tommy's definitely the rat slayer in the basement.
Oh yeah, deck building is Charlie work.
I embrace it. I like building decks.
All right, so for frame of reference on that, Tommy's like, "Oh, Scott, how about you? Can you throw together like a mill deck that you think will be fairly decent?" And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, I don't make decks. What is he asking me to do here?
You build
make
decks.
the mill
I
deck.
critique
You
them.
pilot it.
Yeah.
Does the deck have black 1 in it? I didn't build it then.
Yeah. Is there not a member of Red Squadron in the character lineup?
Didn't build it.
And not Black One? Didn't build it, yeah.
Didn't build it.
All right, we will roll on into regional talk. There were 5 regionals this past weekend that concluded. The first one, we'll kind of go through them, say the winners, and then we have the breakdown of mostly all of them depending on size. And this information is coming from Ira Bell. So shout out to Jedi Geek Girl for putting this stuff together each week. And it's super helpful for content creators and even just people to see what's winning, see what's doing well. But the first one we have is Hawaii, and there were 9 players there. The winner was Snoke, Elite Snoke Afra Battle Droid with Bitter Rivalry. The second place was Vader with Elite Mother Talzin. And semifinalists were Elite Dooku, Elite Mother Talzin, and then Elite Dooku and Elite Bib Fortuna.
Nobody should get too excited about Bib Fortuna being a semifinalist there, considering that that's 4 out of 9 at that point. It's it's rough.
We take that back.
I can't. It's rough with small events like that because obviously the guy who won it or the guy or girl who won it, they don't have any control over who shows up for the event. But when we're talking about an event, 9 people, it becomes a much weaker data point when you're trying to compare with the other events that went on this weekend.
I'm just happy that Bib's name got brought up outside of the spoiler for Bib.
Yeah, that might be the
outside of the spoiler and outside of hating him.
That's the first time I've ever actually seen a deck with Bib Fortuna, to be honest. I could not tell you anything beyond the fact that he is a yellow villain character. Couldn't tell you anything else.
See, that's where we differ because I have decks on the DB with Bib in it from a few metas ago. But my if you guys could see my deck lists on
deck
the
building
DB,
is Charlie work.
You guys would just mock me. It was a Quinlan Voss Bib Fortuna deck that used.
Oh god!
It was like an OTK style deck. The theory was sound. Leave me alone.
Did you ever kill anybody?
Yeah,
even beyond
I did.
one turn.
No, I did. It worked once. I only played it once, but it worked.
Oh, so 100% win rate.
Yeah, exactly. You could take that for what it's worth.
Take
just
it to
like
the
a
bank.
9-man regional. But I think it's interesting that you see Snoke Afro Battle Droid with bitter rivalry because it's your health is at such a premium in that deck because you're gonna deplete your own health while your opponent's depleting your health, and one of your large advantages is your recurring draw and increasing your hand size with Afra, and Bitter Rivalry literally takes away your health and allows your opponent to have a hand advantage on the first turn. So it's interesting that that's still found some success.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't like a necessarily an awful call. I don't think it'll stay within the meta as we go forward, for the reasons that you just mentioned, Tommy. But I mean, I guess if you look at the semifinalists and then the finalists, who's they're still at quite a health advantage.
Yeah, I mean, and
Um,
it's going to be hard for Vader to land a Fear and Dead Man when he only has one die, and
yeah,
against the 3 character deck, that is one of your big power plays. So
yeah, exactly. If they get off an early way of the Force, make him elite, then there's a chance. But just going against 2 character decks, that whole top four, I don't know what the other 5 people were running, but it could have been fine just for that specific tournament. But yeah, I would be surprised if it makes
I,
continues to make a splash.
I think we've hit our time limit for the first event.
All right, Scott, he's flying out to Hawaii next year to make that an even 10 purse. But we'll move on to North Dakota. This one had 45 players. The winner was Elite Vader and Single Die Greedo. The finalist in second place was Elite Plo Koon, Padawan Padawan. Semifinalists were Elite Yoda and Leia 3, and Han 3 and Poe 2. And then wrapping up the top 8 was Elite Han, Elite Kira, Elite Yoda, Elite Chewbacca, Elite Han, Elite Biggs, and Elite Lando, Anakin, Engineer.
So I think that I'm not surprised that Vader is winning regionals in this crazy format currently, because he is one of the only known quantities that's just he can roll out, he can destroy you, and he's got a reasonable amount of tech at his disposal. We do have 6 sets worth of cards, but I feel like Vader is in a good position, and even once the meta settles down, it's hard for me to see a spot where Vader doesn't exist in it. I think he's kind of going to be there no matter what. When I look at this field specifically, the one thing that stands out to me is the Plo Padawan Padawan deck coming in second is really interesting. I think that the deck is good. I think that deck is going to have a very hard time beating Vader for one simple reason. Fear and Dead Men will blow that deck up. And I know that you're probably running Close Quarters Assault. At least I feel like you should be. But the Vader player has to know that you're running that, and has to know that if he hits a Fear and Dead Men, he's going to win the game. So the Vader player should never really give you an opportunity where you can get enough melee dice into the pool to really rip his hand apart. I mean, action 1, roll in Vader. Action 2, Fear and Dead Men. You should always be going first before a Plo Padawan deck. So I think that that's a really difficult task for a Plo Padawan deck to take down Vader, in my opinion, if they can hit that Fear and Dead Men.
Yeah, that's a huge amount of your health is just ripped off, and it's not inconceivable that they get that off, and they could also kill a Padawan in the first turn.
Yeah, I mean, you're taking 12 damage. Your total life pool is literally 24.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
So I mean, assuming they hit the 4.
Yeah, even if they hit the 3, it's still
nice. It's enough.
Both Padawans are then in, you've put them in range of being killed if Vader rolls out well enough afterwards. Mm-hmm. And that's obviously one thing that Vader brings to the table consistently is if he rolls well enough, he will do well.
But he gives himself so many opportunities to roll well enough, which is the important thing, like you said earlier, with the new big character mechanics of pseudo hiding his dice, in the sense that he can, if he rolls well and forces you to remove it, he gets a second chance to roll well. Yeah. Or to put dice in the pool if they're running Dark Council, which I think is a nice card to fit with a Vader deck because of the focus sides and the draw mechanics, so that you get your rerolls. You have the ability to power action. You still have other cards to play, and then the focus sides are very helpful for him as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised too. Even just trying to run cards like Boundless Ambition to stuff your hand more, to give you more rerolls, and also to find stuff like Price of Failure with Greedo that they're probably running in Standard to reset him. I was gonna say what was interesting. I don't think it was this one, the North Dakota one, but in Arizona, Vader Greedo also won, but I guess we'll get to that in a second. But in his deck that he posted on the database, he had quick draw just for Vibra Knife plays, which to me I think is absolutely hilarious. To just rolling Vader with a Vibra Knife and potentially, ideally, like an Ancient or Vader's lightsaber also on him. To me, that just terrifies me. Just letting Vader just potentially roll in and resolve whatever he gets could be a huge damage swing
I
that you might not see coming. I don't think it's great, but for like a first weekend after an errata, something like a quick draw with a Vibra Knife with Vader, something I don't think most people really thought about because it wasn't really included in any Vader list before that.
yeah, I think it's kind of Vader does what he does without the need to. I mean, his dice are sustaining themselves because of his ability as is. So the hidden ball trick with hiding his dice, I just think it's superfluous with what Vader brings to the table.
Like I am kind of there, but also like I've played games where I've just like destroyed Vader because I had like a piece of removal that was 2 dice and a piece of removal that was 1 die. So something like Force Speed or Quick Draw, or Force Speed even more so because you could Force Speed and still power action. Just because it says if one or more of this character's dice were removed during an opponent's last turn this round, then you can discard a card.
Mm-hmm.
But something like I play Hidden Motive on one of its dice, I remove it, and then he power action it backs in, hits damage, and then I all of a sudden into the garbage chute or something, and now both of Vader's dice are gone. Like those are like a few plays where Vader could just like it makes his sequencing awkward. So having something to hide it every now and again, like a Force Speed. I mean, I think Force Speed's a much better route to go than something like a quick draw. But I feel like having something to help protect Vader so you don't walk into like double removal plays like that could be pretty important for him.
I think I'm much more interested in finding ways to uh, deal surprise damage once his dice are in the pool. Like, I know he only has one resource side, but I feel like bait and switch is like a good option for that. Force strike, um, maybe even if you're running force speed and you have any focus sides, things like that that just
Mm-hmm.
make your opponent have to play around certain things like that. I think quick draw being that 2 card combo that you have to land, like it just feels, if you don't see the vibro, quick draw is worthless. If you don't see quick draw, vibro's okay, but you're probably not going to play it because you're waiting for your quick draw. So it really changes the way you have to play the deck, and I feel like there's much more efficient ways to um, correct your dice in a window where they can't be removed. And like Scott said, I don't feel like you're getting the maximum value from that because he already has the built-in solution.
I'd rather just run friends in low places if I was running Vader with the yellow.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean,
just as
spot Greedo, but who's killing Greedo?
Just as the protection to the mitigate again play.
I mean, with Price of Failure though, like I almost feel like you're probably doing that round 2.
Yeah, but if you hit a price of failure, your play should be pretty much crippling at that point to secure the game.
Well, I just mean in terms of putting friends in low within my deck. Like I don't know. I probably wouldn't put.
Well,
this
if
on
you're
my
if you're so if you're hitting a price of failure round 2, then you're really only seeing 10, maybe 11 cards of your deck if you're playing Dark Council, or maybe more if you're playing Boundless Ambition. So if you see one early, a friends in low places, then you're able to squeeze that extra damage through round 1, or squeeze that extra damage through early round 2 on Vader's first activation to set yourself up for the kill once you eliminate Greedo. I think that it still works with the price of failure.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I
I
don't think
mean,
it's awful,
we'd have to
but
sequence
yeah,
it. I mean,
yeah.
we'd have to see it. Like, actually, it's one of those things that you probably have to play. It's harder to just envision. I don't know. I could be totally wrong. I think I agree that I think price or friends in low places is a much better option than the quick draw.
And cost 2 less
Yes.
cards.
Yeah, and no
Yes.
resources. I mean, I know you get the die with the vibro knife, but you probably just want Vader's saber, and then you can pretty much go to town.
Yeah, I really don't see many people even putting more than like 3 or 4 upgrades in
Yeah,
terms
it's
of
Vader
damage.
Saber, double lightsaber pull, and maybe Ancients or Dark Councils, and that's it.
Yeah, that's probably about it.
All right, I think I think the other thing to note is that there's a we're seeing a decent amount of Han 3. A
Yeah,
good
he
strong
seems
character.
all around. I mean,
Yeah, he
he's
seems good.
3 of the decks here, and you know they even though you have a hero red yellow pairing in Han 3 Po 2 and then Han 3 Biggs, those decks have a similar style to them, but they arrive at that style in a completely different way. They're both able to do a lot of the activate, resolve, leave shenanigans. But how they're getting around that. Obviously Han and Poe are playing the more traditional weapons on them game, whereas Han and Biggs are playing the Falcon 2 to really kind of accomplish their goals. So it's he fits in a lot of places, and then obviously the pairing with Kira, that's you're getting a lot of health on 2 relatively already beefy characters, and you're gaining a little bit of versatility, especially with Han's special now saying 2 indirect damage, lose take an opponent's resource, gain a resource, or not take an opponent's resource, but delete an opponent's resource.
Yeah, it's definitely a strong pairing as well. I know we mentioned that on ABG's episode that they're pretty high on that deck, and I would agree with that. I like that there's a Lando Anakin engineer in here too. I spent some time with that deck in trilogies, and I'm curious to know if they were running the landing dock battlefield, because you can just do terrible, terrible, dirty things to your opponent with that. If you drop in any yellow vehicle and then have ambush, you gain control of the battlefield, and then you can really brutalize your opponent with things like defensive position or the new aerial advantage card. There's just so many amazing plays when you're running a battlefield like that, and you have Lando's power action, which will allow you to gain ambush, or if you even just want to play a pod racer, it works fine there too.
Yeah, they opted for Weapons Factory Alpha.
Yeah,
It was the Destiny Council. I saw they posted theirs on the database.
Yeah, I mean it's a good choice too. I thought that there was some really awesome blowout plays you could make defensively with landing dock.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
Building it's built different, and I'm sure it has a reason.
I mean, that's what we in the lead up to PAX Unplugged, like you said, like you kind of came up with this lineup, and it was pretty solid. Eventually, we moved on to Yoda because
it was mostly for armored reinforcements. It was just too valuable to not run.
Yeah, and I mean Yoda's just a good character, and obviously
Yoda's amazing too. It was armored reinforcements that really made me want
to get away from
the Lando Anakin engineer.
Yeah, definitely. But it was solid for what it was. But the consistency of AR is obviously beyond anything.
The plus side in standard of not running armored reinforcements is that your deck is likely running a larger array of vehicles, so you are not as vulnerable to any people teching in things like vandalize, sabotage, EMP grenades, strategic strike. You'll get hit by those things, but you have backups in your deck, whereas some of the AR decks might not.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And if you're running AR and you don't have the backups, you're probably running shield generators, but you have to be careful at that point.
It is interesting to me too, like on that note of hero vehicle, like a multiple hero vehicles deck like this. Like I wonder if we are going to see anything to come back that it is a little bit more on this end of it. I guess this is the start of it, but something like a Rose deck with 3 wide and playing the crate speeders and things like that. I think that would be a strong deck, but it'll be interesting to see if that like ever pops up again. Like it almost feels like AR is just
Well, I mean,
even though everybody's teching against it, it's still just super good.
So one of the character pairings that did fairly decently through some of the store championships was Rose with 2 Jedi Partisans and Long-Term Plan. Well, Long-Term Plan costs the same as Armored Reinforcements. You can just run that deck with Armored Reinforcements. So if you want to look at it, you could run that deck with Armored Reinforcements, but still keep kind of the same larger vehicle package and just get a discount on a Y-Wing first turn.
The fear of running a deck like that, again, I think is Vader kind of just keeps you in check. I think it's hard because you have even a harder time getting into your opponent's hand. At that point, I think you need to mill them aggressively so that you can hopefully hit Fear and Dead Men off the top, because again, you're literally in a situation where you're losing half your health from a Fear and Dead Men if it's a 4.
Well, I mean, you do have the ability to run both scruffy-looking Nerf Herder and Friends in Low Places in that deck, and then that deck would have access to a lot of the kind of bigger dual mitigation that could give you those plays of take a Vader die out, he rolls him back in, you take 2 with, say, like an Into the Garbage Chute.
Absolutely, you definitely have the removal package for it, even suppressive fire.
Yeah.
Which I think people should probably be teching in if you have the hero red at your disposal.
Is it teching in at?
But I just
feel
like there is a big. What was that?
Is it teching in if it's like almost an auto include card sometimes?
I don't think it's an auto include by any means, just because it's basically one resource for 1 die, and it's the nice part is it's somewhat action efficient, but you also have to have the time to play it before they roll in. So in the late game, it's extremely devalued. Yeah. I don't think it has the upside that a lot of the removal has when we have 6 sets. There's so many pieces of removal that cost 1 resource that are going to hit multiple dice that I think it's devalued from that standpoint.
But then you also have the standpoint of, it's one card, 1 resource to remove 1 die, but then since it's your action, in most cases, you then have the ability to play other removal, so you can get some nice blowout sequences there where in a lot of cases you can't utilize the 2 mitigation cards you have in hand because the actions, you use 1 and then they resolve the rest. And then
no, that is the upside. The downside is endgame when your opponent rolls out and you've drawn that card in your 5. So there is a give and take there, is my point. I think it's a very balanced, well-rounded card. And I think a character like Vader being in the meta and it being a loophole in his ability is what brings that, to the top, being a card that you want to include in like every red hero deck.
And just looking at, say, the field for this particular tournament, great against Vader, works against the others, but great against Han Po because they're obviously going to be trying to hide their dice. And great against the Han Bigs because, again, they're going to be obviously trying to hide their dice. So that's one way you can get them off of, hitting you for that 8 damage play or 6. But that could be the difference between winning and losing.
Definitely good about action cheating. Definitely good against action cheating as well. And it's also nice because it's not dependent on any sides. Like, it's not an Into the Garbage Chute where you're limited to, certain sides. Like, you have the ability
you can knock
to
Yoda off the
discard
special.
even a Leia side if they hit and run and they're trying to commando raid you.
Yeah, if you're playing against the mill deck and things like that. All right. I'll read North Carolina there, Jack?
Hit it, dude.
All right, so North Carolina, 49 players, so this makes it the largest of this past weekend. Winner, we have E. Yoda, Gungan, Armored Reinforcement. Finalist is Han 3, E. Yoda with Double Dealing. And then our semifinalists are E. Kylo, E. Wolf Yularen. And then we have another E. Yoda, E. Han Double Dealing setup. And then the quarterfinalists is where it gets a little bit more spicy in a few senses. You have 2 Vader decks. One is the Vader Greedo, so that seems to be, it's probably one of the most popular decks throughout the weekend's events. And then you have an E-Vader Jawa Retribution. And then to round it out, you're looking at E-Lando, E-Wedge, and then an E-Rex clone Jedha Partisan deck. So those are both interesting takes on the red-yellow hero.
This is North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
I think one of those Han Yoda decks, I don't know if it's the 2nd place or the 4th place or whichever one. I think one of those is supposed to be Hondo. At least I remember reading, like, somebody wrote down the tournament structure of it.
So Yoda, Hondo.
Because I remember them facing off.
Double. Okay. So one of those is Yoda, Hondo, double.
I believe it's the one that lost in the semifinals. I believe the finals was still Han Yoda, but the loser one was Yoda Hondo with double down still because they're both 15 points.
Way to go, Jack.
Hey man, whatever.
He was about to say I didn't put this information in the Google Doc for you.
Whatever, man. That seems like an interesting game that I wouldn't want to feel like playing. Yoda Han versus Yoda Hondo. That seems
I would not want to be the Hondo player in that matchup.
no.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of like Hondo in the end game is just going to be difficult to win games. But I mean, like, this guy
Yeah.
got to the
Well,
top four, so
I think
with a
in
Yoda Hondo. So and double dealing
it does,
adds
but
a
I think if
twist
you're
for sure.
playing, if you're staring down what is probably relatively mirrored decks, and it's Hondo and Han. Han makes you money pretty well, and Hondo doesn't like when the opponent can make money.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a terrible matchup. And Han has
Yeah,
printed
yeah,
damage
that's always
sides.
And I'm not sure about the Hondo deck, but I know the Han one ran 3 hyperspace jump and 3 force speeds for its extra cards from Double Down. Or not extra cards, but
Force speed, that's
Yeah,
an
that's.
interesting
I
3-0.
mean, I guess that's really wanting to see it early, and I can understand why with some of the decks you might feel is in the format, or from the standpoint of wanting to be able to be faster than the fast decks at times, and then also wanting to get maximum value before you do hit your reset button, because that can sometimes.
Yeah, because you'll be able to roll in Yoda and
Yeah.
then stack up actions and then do
Yeah,
everything
you'll
with
be able
Han and
to
jump.
not only do a bunch of specials, but you could also say do a bunch of specials, resolve a Han 2 damage, and not have missed out on 2 damage, which is important.
I personally would never do that. I think it's an awful decision on 3 force speeds because now I have to go buy another one. So that's just not.
I hope that person borrowed it. I hope that person
Yeah.
was like, hey, can I 3-4 speeds? That's an expensive investment.
Yeah, and I believe I saw the write up somewhere Facebook. I don't exactly remember. Maybe I think he wrote up on Destiny Council. I don't exactly know, but he ended up losing 2-1 in the finals to the Yoda armored reinforcement with the Gungan and hired gun. But it was interesting because it basically was dependent on his battlefield. Like he said, the second game he blew the guy out, but that's because he was on Theed and could ramp into what he wanted super quick,
Yeah.
and be able to jump on a consistent basis, which makes sense because the reset is obviously a good deck, but you almost feel like if somebody can just jump out of a turn, roll in their stuff, he's running 2 all-ins. He should just be able to resolve everything, jump, resolve everything, jump, resolve everything, jump. He's running 3 of them, but it just seemed like if you can slow down his ramp and not let him get Theed, which doesn't seem like too hard of a I don't know how good that is in winning the roll off because both characters have 2 blanks. Yeah,
Bad.
It's not good at all. Yeah, a matter of fact, the Yoda Gungan hired gun. I mean, the hired gun is the piece that complicates things there because he's got the 3 and the 2, which edge out the dice in that matchup probably.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one Han Solo die is probably just better than a Gungan die, but then obviously, like you said, the hired gun is much better.
Yeah. It's pretty close, but in a top cut situation, I think you alternate between rounds, or the
loser
ones that
picks, I believe.
Yeah, the loser would pick. So I mean, if he gets on his battlefield, if the AR deck gets their battlefield round 1, even if Han Yoda wins round 2, round 3 is still on. It's not on Theed, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. So, and there's also other ways to switch the battlefield mid-game. But with hyperspace jump, you will be able to return it to that if you can land the first one. So, I mean, there is that built-in safety net.
Yeah, it's just the problem with that is you're having to hit. You're having to use a jump to switch the battlefield while the battlefield is what provides you the ability to jump easily and efficiently while not hurting your damage.
Yep, for sure. I mean, you're going to have to bite that bullet.
You definitely have to, and I think I obviously can't speak to what's in this deck, but I think it's almost the type of situation where you may need to think about slotting Truce in that deck just for the matchups where you're off your battlefield so that you can get on your battlefield and really kind of get rolling with what you're doing.
Yeah, he was not running Truce in his, but I see.
It's a tough sell because you're basically running a card that if you win your battlefield, you already do. But
I mean, your entire economy for the deck is probably built into your battlefield, and both your characters having a surplus of resources. It's tough to swallow.
Yeah,
adding even dedicating 2 slots in a 30 card deck to that.
But because your economy is predicated on your battlefield, you need to, in a lot of cases you're seeing with some of these decks that are Theed centric, their economy is predicated on playing on Theed, having access to that. So when they don't, it's a big difference.
I'm actually interested in some statistics. I'd love to know what these, the quarterfinalists up. I'd love to know how many of these decks were running Theed. I would venture to say it's probably in the ballpark of 50%.
50? Wouldn't be surprised if it was more than that. Like if it was
I wouldn't
pushing
either.
like 70.
It could be 70. I wouldn't be shocked at all because I think it's a fantastic battlefield and I think it's seeing a ton of play. But some decks where like if you are a vehicle deck, Weapons Factory Alpha is a better choice because you're going to be slow and your opponent's not going to get value off of that like they would Theed. So I mean, there's certain decks you wouldn't want to take it in.
So looking at North Carolina, I would imagine maybe, but probably no on the winner's deck. Yes on the finalist. Yes on both semifinalists. And then in the quarterfinalists, I'd say I'd say it's half, because I would be very surprised if Rex ran Theed. And
he knows he's going to get it, but your opponent could power action immediately, so
Yeah.
you probably run something else.
You want
something with
Weapons
it.
Factory if you're in that. Like if you're looking to ramp out vehicles.
I know that deck wasn't running vehicles. I just don't remember what battlefield was in it. And then obviously the Elendo E-Wedge, that is going to run Weapons Factory Alpha because, again, it's only upside for you. Doesn't really provide much of an upside for a lot of your opponents.
So we talked a little bit about the Armored Reinforcements deck and the Kessler Reset decks, and like Jack said, the jump and retreat existing in the standard format are really what could potentially hinder them. And yes, there's always ways to play around it with Scruffy or whatever other path to their hand is. But I just want to say that earlier I stated my concern for Armored Reinforcement being too good is more of a future concern when things like Hyperspace Jump and Retreat rotate and they're no longer able to keep that deck in check. And then we're going to need new tools and find new ways to handle things like that. But in this meta, I still think that Armored Reinforcements is good enough to take a deck to a winning slot, which it did. But I do feel like if everybody's going so fast, that's a really difficult challenge to play every round to know that your opponent's trying to jump out every round. That's tough, especially when a card like Double Down exists and there's 3 of them in the deck.
I mean, the biggest plus side with the Armored Reinforcement, especially if you're talking about the Shadowcaster, is most of your offensive power is contained within just that. So you do not have the same issue that vehicle decks of old had, where their offensive power is dispersed through a bunch of different vehicles, where it's going to take them 4 to 5 activations to get all of their dice that they need to get into the pool. The Shadowcaster, even if it doesn't get a reset, can still hit like a mother.
For sure. And there you go, putting Jack back to work.
I was trying to. Because he really, I forgot that he, a little bit of a, I don't know, prude, wants it to be family friendly. I'm not sure what. Right? I heard he beeped Shane. Was it Shane of all people? Or was it Eldis? I think it was Eldis.
I know Eldis. Eldis dropped at least one in there.
Oh, yeah, Eldis did.
Oh, that's great. I think I might be the only person on this podcast outside of Jack who hasn't been bleeped yet.
I was tempted just to bleep Shane, just to,
Yeah,
just
get his
just
name
arbitrarily.
Yeah.
We'll figure out something, some way to get you, Tommy.
Okay, you're gonna try to get me to trip up.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all right. I'm happy to see that Kylo too and Wolf got in there. I think that's just a cool deck. I like the synergy of being able to look at your hand and maximize his ability. I don't know if that's going to remain in the top fold. I feel like it could be outclassed, but it was a really cool concept. Definitely think we're going to see a lot of Double Down and a lot of Vader, and I think we can move on. Interesting that Mill wasn't really represented at this event. I think that Mill will be represented, or at least in the top 8, I guess.
Yeah, I think part of me, I don't have any statistics on that, but part of me just thinks that people didn't run it. Like early is just everybody running some form of aggro, but...
Well, I mean, it's hard to say because, Scott, you drew the comparison earlier of Sabine and Vader. And we know that historically, Mill has had a difficult time with Sabine, and
Mhm.
I know that Mill decks have a whole new kit now. But Vader may fill that role of being the it's your win percentage is not where you want it to be against that deck, and it's too large of a chunk of the field, and you're not as good against the vehicle decks as you were because of the reasons that you just stated from armored reinforcement. So
Really
maybe
the
we
dirt.
won't see the rise in Mill, even though it looks to be so powerful. I'm very curious to see if Mill starts to take over or not, but only weeks to come will tell.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's a it's an interesting proposition. I definitely agree with what you just said. One thing of interest I wanted to note, with Wolf Yularen, he actually gets a little boned by the errated text on hyperspace jump. The fact that hyperspace jump gets set aside when it gets used means he doesn't get the ability to really rip it out of the opponent's hand on subsequent turns.
It's tough. You have to hit a discard on it, like naturally, the
Yeah.
old-fashioned way, early, and then you can set that up
Hmm.
for subsequent turns, assuming that they're not running Rebel.
Well, there's
Which
that one card. I don't know if this deck ran it, but the one that won Ohio that
Yeah.
first week ran Question Loyalty, which is play if you have one or
Mhm.
more dice shown a discard, name a card, look at opponent's hand, and discard each copy of named card from it.
Yeah, you're definitely naming hyperspace jump anytime you're playing a deck like that.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
sure.
exactly.
Just
So
just for the off chance that then you can be like, all right, you're never going to get to do this again.
That's a deck that I haven't seen on the table yet, and I think I'd like to. It just seems cool and fun. I
I'm
think
yeah, I'm
that's
I'm
cool.
half surprised you haven't built it.
Yeah, I mean, I like blue and red villain for
Yeah,
sure.
this
So,
of these decks, I really obviously the E-Rex, getting a chance to use all the battlefield shenanigan mitigation, and then the Elando E-Wedge. I know the one from North Carolina did have planned explosion in it, which is obviously some interesting tech for two characters that can really kind of just accidentally planned explosion you turn one.
yeah, for sure. That is definitely an option, and I think a lot of people won't see that coming because I didn't give it much thought until you mentioned it. That's really cool.
I mean, there's a type of thing like might not see it coming. Even if they see it coming, there's just not enough ways to
You'd be more
remove.
likely to. Well, I mean, if you don't have two resources, I'm not removing Lando's 4 for 2 side
Yeah,
unless I'm aware of that.
yeah.
yeah,
But even then, it's hard to remove resource sides. And then if you're removing Lando's dice there, when your opponent can't resolve them, your opponent probably that's probably a win in their book too, even if it keeps them off the planned explosion that they may or may not have at the moment.
Yeah, no, you're right, but I'll let them have that small victory if it means I'm going to win the game.
Yeah, that you're going to survive for a turn. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right, New Hampshire. Yeah, I'll read through it again. So 48 players, so basically the same size as North Carolina there. The winner is E. Tobias Beckett, E. Sienna Armored Reinforcements. To my understanding, was a fire spray reset deck. Then we had our finalist E. Vader Bazine, so more Vader. And then semifinalist Kylo 2, E. Anakin, so Emo Kids version 2.0
with Theed.
with Theed. With Theed. And then we have Han 3 Kira, no allegiance, obviously. And then Yoda, Boosh, Dooku Mother, Snoke, Bazine, Sienna, Armored Reinforcement, and then another E-Wedge, E-Lando, 2.
Tobias Sienna, fire spray reset. I think I saw this list. I think they had a fair amount of vehicles in it, if I'm recalling correctly. But man, there's not a lot of life there.
Nope. There is
Yeah.
not, but I mean, Beckett can be just really abusive as far as keeping your opponent off resources, and that can be a big boon to your health pool if your opponent can't play the things that they wanted to play.
I think exactly what you said is the key because I don't think you have the defensive tools or the durability to survive unless your disrupt is to the point where you're really impacting your opponent's game plan and keeping them off of what they want to do. It's a different take on. I mean, every time you roll a disrupt side, you should assess the value of that die. I mean, I'm guilty of not doing it all the time. I messed up with a few resolutions of that at PAX against Cody, and he made me pay for it. Um, but like disrupting your opponent to the point where they can't play hyperspace jump is every bit as good as just ripping it out of their hand and placing it in the discard pile, maybe even better because Rebel exists. I mean, that's a fantastic way to counter things like that when you are playing a vehicle deck that wants to reset, that needs to take a long time, that wants to get into that end of the round game where your opponent's constantly passing and you're just, hammering away, and they, are either have one piece of mitigation or are bluffing that they have a piece of mitigation. You're just doing work, and you're eating their resources, and you can put them in a position where, if that's not a zero cost piece of mitigation, it's worthless.
Yeah. I mean, Beckett has been. I
Jinx.
was playing. You owe me a soda. I said it first. I played Brian the other day, and he was running Beckett Hondo, and it was like the most annoying thing in the world. Just messing with my resources with Beckett. And then
Beckett Hondo seems like it just would be annoying, not effective, whereas Beckett
no.
and other
Yes.
things that bring real heat seems like
Yes.
it could be obviously seems like it could be effective. One of 48-person regional was effective.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I think, is just the options. I've not seen the list, but I'm going to say at bare minimum they're running a fire spray and a Umbar and hover tank. So if they're playing like against a big character, middle, or something like that, it's, definitely Vader, you're probably just going to take out the fire spray, power action a mod onto it, and then try to reset that for big damage onto their big character. Whereas if you're playing against a 3-wide, which there wasn't much, but if you did, you just take the Umbaro hover tank and just try to get that special resolved a few times in a turn with a mod on it, so you're doing 3 damage to each character. And they were probably running Weapons Factory, so like the hover tank probably costed 1 turn 1 if they wanted to do that, which is obviously great value.
Yeah, I can't see that deck running Theed, because then you're just kind of giving your opponent the ability to get out of the deep hole you're trying to dig them with Beckett.
Maybe I didn't see that list. Maybe I saw the Snoke list with Sienna, and they were running more vehicles. I can't recall.
To my knowledge, the Beckett player had not yet posted the list, but then again, I've been at school all day with finals, so the world could have burnt down around me and I wouldn't have noticed. Yeah, bleep me again, Jack. Do it.
All right, I just wrote it down, dude.
Oh, he's got to timestamp it?
I can't wait to hear that. Oh man, that's gonna make me want to listen to this.
Oh god. I'll have to come up with something.
Well, Tommy, what do you think he would have to do if we did our camaraderie teamwork chant,
Oh, I don't think he could handle that, but I'm gonna guess that it's gonna be the sound of Alderaan being destroyed while you went on that rant.
That is a good one.
And to be honest, I toned down. I was gonna yell real loud, but then I realized, that'd probably be rude to the people in my house.
Probably. It was rude to me, and that's enough, dude.
That's fine.
Yeah, that was rude, Scott. I'm with you, Jack. That was uncalled for.
Yeah, Tommy's yucking it up over the. God, I'm not even doing it purposefully now. I've opened the floodgates.
All right, any other thoughts on that Beckett Sienna AR deck, or any other thoughts about New Hampshire in general?
I mean, it's probably the coolest deck you see out of all the ones we're talking about this weekend.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Both just from the standpoint of uniqueness, and then also the standpoint of putting a character out there in Beckett that hasn't necessarily gotten the spotlight. And then it's a different take on the armored reinforcement, because it seems like most of the armored reinforcement stuff, with the exception of the Snoke Sienna deck in this tournament, most of it seems to be on the hero side, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Number one among that would be the R2 Astromech, but a villain.
Sienna's the same thing.
Yeah, Sienna's the same thing there, except doesn't necessarily facilitate your Shadowcaster. But the fire spray is quite fantastic as well. So it's definitely an option. It's not overshadowed completely by the Shadowcaster, thus making the hero side the only armored reinforcement possibility.
And I'd like to personally retract my previous statement about that being the most interesting deck, because it was clearly the Dooku Bib deck that stole my heart.
Dooku Bib.
Go back to Hawaii. There we are.
Mm-hmm.
It counts. All right. Any other thoughts on New Hampshire? And then we
see a
Arizona.
Snoke. Yep, the Snoke peered up his ugly head even after taking the nerf in one of these
Snoke's still
sizable
good, man.
regional.
Snoke is still good.
Yeah, I think people are just trying out 2 wide like aggro decks now, and he'll certainly be back.
The immediate reaction was going to be to not play Snoke, because every deck that anyone had put together with, not every deck, but a lot of the decks people had put together with Snoke, all of a sudden weren't going to work. So they were just like, well, I'm going to try something else.
Yeah.
I gotta say too, to go back to the beginning of the cast when Scott said that he felt Yoda should have got the +1 as well. I agree with that. However, I feel like Snoke needed it more. He's slightly better than Yoda, not a full point better than Yoda, but he's still better than Yoda in my mind. And if you were only to hit one, Snoke needed it more.
Snoke has damage side. That's the real separator.
Yep.
To be honest.
Yeah, and his one of his best abilities is his power action, which you don't need to use his dice on. Like Yoda, I mean, we've talked about before. But yeah, I agree with you, Tommy. I agree with you there. All right, we'll hop in Arizona then. This was a smaller 20-person one in Arizona. The winner was Elite Vader and Greedo. Second place was Elite Snoke, Elite DJ, and semifinalists were Elite Lando, Elite Wedge, and then Lando 2, Luke 3. Both of them are probably Elite.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for the DJ player having to go into the finals against Vader. That just seems like a not fun way to go about. I do mitigation. You ignore mitigation. This is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that the meta is primed for DJ at this point. I think DJ Snoke is a fine pair, but I think that when you do hit a Vader, it is. I don't think that win percentage is where you're going to want it to be, and I think that anytime you go to a decent-sized event, you're risking the chance of seeing it 2 to 3 rounds on average.
Yeah, I think DJ peaked around the Nova meta, and even then, it wasn't even that high of a peak. I just can't see how he fits into this current meta with people like Vader and also these quick decks like
or decks running TLT.
Even
or decks
the
running
Shadowcaster.
Yeah, like I can't see him standing up to a lot of the powerful decks within this current format.
So kudos to this player to making it to the finals despite that.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about. So he certainly does. So
It must have been tight.
I mean, yeah, you never, looking at the semifinalists, neither of those decks necessarily present those same hurdles that we were just talking about, and you have no idea. We don't have the information past this. Maybe the rest of the field was similarly constructed and didn't have any of those like hit and run style decks in it that would have the DJ player, like pulling his hair out in frustration because he has all this mitigation in his hand and there's never any dice on the table.
Yeah, I mean, he could have played that Lando Luke and just removed Lando's dice every time, and then that guy did nothing the entire game.
Yeah, that would be pretty rough.
I imagine that deck is centered around Lando, and then Luke just shields him, and then that's the deck. And then it plays supports.
Yeah, that's one that I'm like, I double took when I read it. I'm like, it was 3 with Lando, but I think I actually did see that one, and I'm trying to bring it up now just because I remember it had the Jedi Interceptor in it, and I thought that was pretty interesting.
I played Brian built it and played it against me the other day, and I discarded him at one point, and I got both of the Jedi Interceptors.
And you're like, what is this?
He was like, jackpot.
Yeah, that's what he cheered. He's like, oh, thank God you pulled that.
I mean, they are.
He did lose to the Snoke DJ. I just found his thing.
The
Luke Lando. That's where he lost to Snoke.
That's just a seemingly terrible matchup. And he literally says the words, "It's a glaring mismatch." So we're not saying any. We're not coming to any real conclusions there. That's just a pretty apparent thing. But yeah, the Jedi Interceptor, it's pretty interesting in that deck. Its damage sides aren't particularly impressive for a 3-cost vehicle, but the fact that you can remove a shield dice, so basically a Luke dice, to exhaust the support, that's some spicy tech against some Shadowcaster decks, especially without the ability to really utilize strategic planning as they had prior.
Yeah, I mean, it seems interesting, but I don't know if we'll see this pop up.
It's got 2 pirate speeder tanks in there, and that's just a vehicle I can't. Like even if I'm playing Lando, I don't want to run the pirate speeder tank.
I'd be okay with a 1-of depending on what my rest of my stuff looks like. I don't know, but I'm not. It's not something I jam in readily.
Now the big thing with all these traditional traditional playing of the vehicle Lando decks, in the sense they're not using the armored reinforcements. I'd be interested in seeing like which Falcon they decide on, because clearly their yellow vehicle with Lando, they're running a Falcon. Is it the 6-cost Falcon with the escape craft? Is it the 4-cost Falcon? And in the case of Wedge deck, I'd imagine still the escape craft, because the escape craft is very efficient economy wise with Wedge.
Both this deck and the Engineer Anakin deck ran the 6-cost one.
And I believe honestly sarcastic at New Hampshire with his Wedge Lando ran the 4-cost one and still ran the escape craft, just because of the efficiency of the economy stuff, and then the fact that attach it. Oh, sweet mod.
Yeah, I feel like you'd want to run the 4-cost unless you're an armored reinforcement deck, or if you were running like L3, because of the you could make that your as Scott likes to put it, your Voltron Lion bot machine, where you just load that up and reset it. I think that's got the damage sides to get it done, especially if you can get the additional reset off with the death of L3. But I'm not sure. I think the 4-cost is the way to go with the Wedge Lando. I
feel like I almost view the 6-drop as so much. I think it's better than the 4-drop early game, but late game, like I think the 4-drop is just better. Like if you can get the 6-cost out early, you can immediately make your money back on it, and then late game obviously resolve it for damage sides. But then that 4-drop is obviously going to be much better at closing a game and doing consistent damage. Where I don't know, I just feel like that 3 resource side gets me going, man.
Well, the other upside of the 6-cost Falcon is that if you're in a meta where Vandalize is pretty prominent, it's virtually unvandalizable unless you're playing a deck that's not competitive whatsoever.
Yeah, unless it's a deck that's like creating battle droids to vandalize you.
Excuse me, my Elite Maz, Elite Jar Jar, Elite Ezra 1 deck is coming for you.
I mean, we're getting close with with New Phasma, where
technically those are character dice.
Those are character. You got 4 right there. I don't know if you can, there's no 9.2 dice character, is there?
Just Jar Jar, but that's the hero side.
So you'd have to run training on a veteran stormtrooper.
Or whatever stormtrooper you drop in there.
It's not the worst.
All right, there it is. There's the meta breaking deck. Yep. I'll see you guys at Convergence.
6 die. Yeah.
or hear me out. Phasma dies. You bring her back with Dark Ritual, and then you power action again.
Oh, and you leave, because those die, just as a rules point of order, those dice that she brings in are not connected to her in any way. So once she brings them in, if she goes, they stay.
Yeah, and with her leaving play and then coming back in with Dark Ritual, it's technically a new instance of the card. Yep, that'd be hilarious.
I'm air quoting thing when I'm saying thing, but that's a thing.
No, that is not a fringe play. That's going to happen every game I play with Phasma.
That's consistency. That's something you build around right there.
All right, Charlie.
How you fit Vandalize in with your red-blue Phasma deck, I don't
know. Well,
there's going to be a blue character where you could include yellow neutral cards.
Yeah, I haven't worked out all the kinks.
That's
Tommy's already on the database. He got quiet a little bit.
You'll hear me just going, oh yes,
I know exactly what Tommy's doing right now.
Yeah, what am I doing, Scott?
He's evolving Pokemons.
Nope, did that already. Became best friends. Evolved Pokemon. About to level up. Yeah, that's right.
Come on, dude. Everybody's on a Smash now. Get with the times.
I can't play Smash. My wife is playing Let's Go Eevee like nonstop.
Yeah, she won't let him have that thing.
But anything other for regionals before we get on a tangent and take us to an hour and a half?
I think we pretty much beat this pretty hard here. We're in good shape with going over all these decks. We probably hit early on, talked about things that kind of could drip down into each of these snapshots of metas. Where we talk about Vader at length early, but he seems to pop up in every one of these. So I think we covered it pretty good. Basically, it's wide open. You're gonna see Vader. I would anticipate Mill coming. If they can handle Vader, Mill will come back.
Yeah, And it's obviously a heavier 2-character meta. That doesn't mean there's not 3-character decks popping up, but it's much heavier on the 2-character meta. So if you think you have something that is advantageous in that matchup, then you'd probably be in a good position to bring it. And I'd have to imagine once that Tobias Sienna deck gets posted, people are going to try and bring that. And that's probably going to be the deck that's like, 4 people bringing it to an event, and, 3 of them have a losing record just because they chose the cool looking deck of the weekend and didn't really like put in any time to think about like what plays they needed to do or how they were going to protect their low health characters or their low health pool characters.
Yeah.
Even in the 3-character decks we're seeing, most of them are running armored reinforcements, which is kind of cutting into their health pool.
Mm-hmm.
And then or in the case of like the Snoke Sienna deck where they're running 3 dice, which is going to hinder their efficiency. So I mean, even a 3-character deck health pool is not very high.
No.
Plo Padawans
Not
not very high. I mean, Han Kira has as much health as Plo Padawans.
Jeez, yeah, it does.
The Yoda Gungan hired gun is maybe the beefiest of the 4 die starts.
Yeah.
Just because the hired gun takes you back up to 9, but even that, what's that,
25?
Yeah.
That's not an insane amount of health.
No.
So I mean, even the 3-character decks aren't having a lot of health. And if Boosh is in the meta, and Vader, there are ways to hit multiple characters with 1 die. So it does make it, you're giving your opponent more damage if they can spread it out that way. So I don't know how much of the 3-character decks we're going to see, but I definitely think armored reinforcements can keep it relevant.
Rex Clone Jetta would be the most health that we've seen this.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're right.
That's back up. That's up there into
wow.
That's up into the more traditional 3-character health pool.
Yeah, 27's a beefy deck, so you're definitely gonna have a hard time cutting through that with like the Snoke After Battle Droid build, or I know Jack has mentioned maybe subbing in something for Snoke there, but you might lose damage output because that power action was amazing. So we don't know, but yeah, low health pools for the most part across the board.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Now we have like a 2-week break until January 5th when regionals kick back up again, so people have plenty of time, to test before we get started.
Here's the thing, though, with the way with where it's falling through the holidays, you could have a situation where, while there is time elapsing, there is not time for testing elapsing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're not playing as much as we typically do.
Nah, yeah. I mean, I think just the only thing would, not necessarily this week, but I feel like after Christmas, that's on a Tuesday. You could be home Thursday, and that gives you like a week and a half to really do stuff. Unless you're a big New Year's person. I personally don't really do much on New Year's because I'm a loser. So if anybody wants to play Destiny on New Year's, let me know.
He's a dweeb that's going to beat me 75
I'm raising
times.
my hand, Jack. I'm raising my hand.
I'm going to watch episode 4 and the Death Star blows up at midnight.
They did have there was a Star Wars marathon on this previous, I guess on Sunday.
Yeah, I could sit down and watch them again. I'm kind of missing it right now that there's no movie out. I wish they just delayed Solo and actually gave it some form of advertisement and released it in December instead of May. But that's just me.
You can go see Aquaman. I would like
to see that, and I hear Spider-Man.
I would go see Spider-Man before I would go see Aquaman, because regardless of how good Aquaman is, they're that entire situation. I just did. They've wandered into a conundrum there with that entire situation of their cinematic universe. Pushing up my glasses.
Well put.
Was that your eldest impression of in person?
That's about as close as I get. Yeah.
I wish we could have Eldest on every week just for that impression. Like I thought
I feel like Eldest made me sound like the scientist from like The Simpsons. Leaving.
Jack, you should cut Eldest's impression of Scott, overlay it on his F-bomb rant.
That could be a good call.
His
to see how
impression of me was even it had factual inconsistencies in it too.
Oh, look at that!
He had the wrong lightsaber.
Calling out Eldest, man.
There you go. All right.
Tommy knows. Everybody knows because I said it in the Discord. But yeah,
And then he made fun of you for calling him out.
doesn't mean I'm not right.
All right. All right. We are just saying dumb things at this point. We will start.
We've said dumb things for an hour and 12 minutes and 46 seconds.
That's true. Hey, that's not going to be exact in the podcast, so you just look dumb now. I'm going to edit, and I'm going to put an intro in, so it'll be a little bit later.
Speaking of
Well, yeah, 'cause
factual
you're going to edit
inaccuracies,
a relatively, the intro is going to add X amount of time, but then what you need to edit out is going to take about the same amount of time out.
Nah.
I'll curse more.
I'll curse more. Don't tempt me.
I'll do it.
We'll start to wrap up.
this was a
Butt
nightmare.
stuff.
Oh gosh, you're the worst. All right, let's re-up Shane's contract.
Jeez.
All right, you guys can find us if you want to indulge any more of our dumb stuff on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, all the good stuff. We have a Patreon if you're looking to support us. We booked streaming for New Jersey and
Jack.
Connecticut. Excuse me?
Said you're 10 ply.
Okay. We booked streaming for those two. We're working on Virginia, so any Patreon support goes a long way towards that stuff, and getting us there and any extra equipment or anything that we have to grab. But yeah, other than that,
Wait, so which
I'd like
ones
to
did we get clearance to do?
New Jersey and Connecticut.
New Jersey and Connecticut, so not Virginia.
Not yet. They told me they would get back to me, but it seemed likely.
Oh, cool.
So most likely we'll be able to stream Virginia. Virginia is January 5th. Connecticut is January 12th, and then New Jersey is February 16th. So if anybody's not have a regional that day, you'll be able to catch a stream.
You know what? Maybe for the, because I know I have the start of my internship stuff the week prior to the Connecticut one, so I won't get any time to play any games. So maybe I'll take the Saturday off for Connecticut, and I'll just do commentary, and then you can really listen to me without Jack and his fascist censorship.
And then all of a sudden that you just hear all these parents and their children stop listening. Our viewership goes down.
Do we have a lot of parents and children listening?
Hey, we had one at Kappa.
We did, but his son's old enough to hear what for.
I'm glad you determined that, Scott.
Apparently, our friend Sai's daughter's old enough to hear anything possible. That's what I learned tonight.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Connecticut is going to be a good one, too, because, the Loops are going to be there. Arrowbrook Gaming is going to be there. On the Hunt is going to be there, which is J-Rod, who won, who also 6-0'd with Honestly Sarcastic.
To drive to that.
Yeah, just getting around New York City was rough last year, but
It's terrible, and I don't know how far
fun.
into Connecticut it is, but 95 is just ugh.
yeah, I feel like it was like a 3-hour drive last year, which isn't bad. Virginia's about 3 hours for us, which is weird to think, and then New Jersey's like 2 hours.
Yeah, it's
all the way
not.
up to Boonton.
Yeah, we're in no man's land here. Not in no man's land. I say that in the sense of, in living in the Northeast, obviously saying no man's land, and there's people living out in the Midwest where they're like, what are you talking about? You have something within 2 hours of you. When I say no man's land up in the Northeast, I say that just because a lot of these dry, it's obviously pretty densely populated up here. And when you start talking like a 2-hour drive, you're not even getting that far. It just takes you that long.
Yeah, all that traffic. Yeah, we are spoiled in a sense that we do have 4 regionals within like a 3-hour drive or so. With Maryland. I can't make Maryland. I don't know if you guys are going to Maryland, but I will not.
I don't know when things are.
You're too busy just cursing up a storm.
Yeah, well, you know what? Someone needs to put you to work. You have to get better at your editing skills. I'm helping you.
That's your job to determine that as well, Scott.
Scott's here just to help us make all of our life choices for us.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to start to close out. Last, I want to give a shout out to Jank It Up Fuzzball. They're a new content creator. They put out a few podcasts, I believe, but I haven't had a chance to listen to one of them, but I put out articles and stuff. But it is Brian, who is one of our patrons as well. And he also made our mall alt arts that we put out a while ago. So definitely go check his stuff out. He's got some articles. He's on Twitter, definitely. I don't know if he's on Facebook, but then they have a website. But if you look him up on Twitter, I think it's just like jankitupfuzzball.com. I forget. But anyways, you can go check that out if you're looking for more content creation. Hey, man, I'm trying.
Failing.
All right. Tommy, do you have a closing thought?
I'd like to pass this off to Scott.
All right, Scott. What's your? We'll let you sign it out. Might just be one giant Wilhelm scream or something, but
I think I've given you enough guff for the day, there, Jack. You had a long day. I'll leave you off on this one.
Off easy, Jack. There you go.
Yeah, and, Jack gets off easy, huh?
Is that it? That was lame. I'm ending it. Way to go. Worst ending ever, Scott.